So to move on, I'd like to introduce you all to today's speaker, who we're very, very pleased to welcome today. Professor Mohammed Arashi is an associate professor at Ferdowsi University of Mashhad, Iran, and an extraordinary professor and C2 rated researcher at the University of Pretoria, South Africa. He has won several prestigious national and international awards and has published over 130 articles in accredited journals. His research interests include shrinkage, penalized estimation, high dimensional analysis, longitudinal data analysis, variable selection, and machine learning. He has also published 2 books with his colleagues in John Wiley, and is also the founder of the Data Science Lab at the Faculty of Mathematical Sciences at the Ferdowsi University of Mashhad. And this morning, he will be presenting a seminar on his research on biliary cirrhosis analysis through the multivariate team mixed effects models. So please join me in welcoming Mohammed, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Diane, for the introduction, and I would like to thank everyone for joining to listen to my talk, which is a kind of biostatistical type modeling, which I'll take you all through the details now. Okay, hello everyone. It is actually a kind of joint work with Dr. Talvone, my postdoctoral fellow at Ferdowsi University of Mashhad. Let's start with the agenda. Actually, I will state a problem on the study, and specifically, I will start with a motivating example, and then I will go through the specification of the model, which is a well-known longitudinal model. We will consider penalization in the estimation part of the study in order to select important variables. And then we will consider the motivating example again by discussing the model and selecting important variables. Actually, you can rely on the results because the work is already accepted in Biometrical Journal. So some reviewers already read the work, and we made substantial revisions several times. So at least the results are okay from reviewer sides. Now let's start with the problem. In many biomedical, biostatistical studies, clinical trials, we come up with the data with more than one response variables. Actually, we have more than one response variables, which they have correlation, and we must study those variables simultaneously. On the other hand, we often encounter with insignificant features in modeling or insignificant parameters or variables, which we can use sort of classical variable selection methods like stepwise methods. But here the focus is to select important variables by automatic selectors. So regarding those insignificant variables, which they don't have impact on the response variable, we try to use a kind of automatic selector variable. So if I want to summarize, what I'm going to present is adopting a multivariate linear mixed effects longitudinal model, which is commonly used in biostatistical modeling, and select important variables and significant variables using an automatic selector. Also, in order to robustify the results and taking care of some parameters, which I will explain later, we will consider a T model for the error term. For the purpose of this presentation, I took a kind of benchmark study. In this benchmark study, I use a data which is freely available in an R package. Actually, this is a subset of primary biliary cirrhosis data, sequential data, to be alive and with liver transplantation for 910 days of study follow-up. If you install this package in R and you call this package, and you can get this data easily. The reason that I use this benchmark study and I selected specifically this data is the availability of the data, that you can redo the analysis and make sure that the model which I'm going to specify is working, and you can, and for future you can also compare your results if you have a different model, if you have alternative one with mine, and see the performance, and if the performance of your model works better or not. We'll see. So in this presentation, I will also consider a comparison with some other models. But let's look at the data. If I look at the structure of the data, I see we have 1,945 observations on 38 variables. This is not actually known as big data, as high dimensional data or big data, because the number of samples you can easily restore in your computer, you can easily analyze the data, and the number of the variables, there are not too many, so you can use classical methods in order to select important variables. But here we want to use penalized methods in order to select important variables. But behind this example, the purpose was actually to show that when you refer to a doctor and the doctor registers some of the variables and, or parameters, you usually, the doctor will usually say, okay, you are male or female, and specifically in this study, there is an important drug variable which is expensive, and we want to show that it is not really necessary to include those variables in modeling. So another reason which I selected this benchmark study, this well-known data from an R package, was to show that when we consider biostatistical modeling, it is not always necessary to include sex and an expensive drug variable. Okay, let's go through the details of the data and the example. This is actually, as I said, about the primary biliary cirrhosis. It is actually a progressive disease of the liver caused by the buildup of the bile within the liver. I adopted this picture from the Google. This disease results in damage to the small bile, actually bile ducts, that drain bile from the liver. So there's a connection between liver and bile, and it is a very dangerous disease, which knowing important factors on this disease is very important. First of all, at the second hand, when you want to do the prediction, I will explain about the responses later. When you want to do the prediction, it is also important to know which variables significantly contribute to the prediction or the predictive modeling. Again, we see liver transplantation, which is called OTD. It can be treated as potentially life-saving alternative for patients with advanced PBC. For the patients who has advanced disease problem, this transplantation will work, and we will discuss about this, about the important factors in liver transplantation. Now, okay, let's see the detection tools. The participants in this disease study were repeatedly measured for the serum bilirubin and serum albumin, as well as some other fractions of blood and plasma. Serum bilirubin and serum albumin are two primary, but I must also say important, essential indicators to help to evaluate the track and absence of liver disease. So you see, we talked to the doctors. They said that, okay, if you want to study a liver disease, which is also connected to the bile, you need to measure the serum bilirubin and serum albumin with some other factors. So as a conclusion with a discussion to the doctor, a significantly higher level than the standard serum bilirubin or serum albumin is an indication of certain disease. So that's the starting point. We consider this data, we talk to the doctor, they will come to us that measuring these two response variables are very important, because if the levels are higher than a specific threshold, then you will understand that these are indications, essential indications of certain disease, and you need to go to the doctor, do the translation. Okay, so serum albumin may be harmful to human having too high or too low circulating serum albumin levels, and what I'm saying now is come from a consultation with doctors. Typically, it is believed that there exists some relation between serum bilirubin and serum albumin levels. Second important factor in our study, we must not model serum bilirubin and serum albumin separately, or better say independently in our study. So there is connection and there is correlation between these two important response variables. And when we want to conduct a biological study and obtain a predictive modeling in order to see changing some factors, some independent factor or some explanatory factors will affect the serum bilirubin and serum albumin causing certain disease, we must take note of this important point that the modeling must be jointly. So we must have a joint model, or better say, thus we can decide a joint analysis of the longitudinal collected bilirubin and albumin serums has increased the emphasis on diagnosing liver diseases. So the target is very clear. We took a very important data. I again said, I will again indicate that this is a benchmark study. The data is not new. It has been frequently analyzed, and many predictive models feed to this data. That's why I decided to present the work on this specific data. It is a kind of joint modeling by means of we have a multivariate model. It is not a multiple model, since we consider the joint model of two factors, which they have high impact on diagnosing the disease. Okay, these are the trajectory plots of this data. You see the observed evaluation of logarithm of Bili and logarithm of albumin. Here I displayed the logarithm. Actually, I computed the logarithm of these two factors, or better say response variables, for 100 randomly selected patients. You see the change over the time, and we have these blue curves, which are the smooth mean profiles of the patients. One important factor in modeling is that you have a data science viewpoint about your model. What I mean by data science viewpoint is you can digest and understand the nature of the data. Here we have two response variables. If we look at the mean profiles, it may come to our mind that, okay, these are nonlinear actually. However, in this study, I would consider the linear modeling. So we take linear model for the joints responses. But for future, if you decided to extend this word, you can also consider nonlinear modeling according to these mean profiles and compare your result with those. Now, the second stage of the work. Again, when we say about data science viewpoint, we must be very cautious about the data analysis. At the second stage of the data analysis, let's work on the residual of the data. We initially fitted two models, the linear mixed effect model and the penalized linear mixed effect model, which I will explain later about our model. This is our proposed model, the penalized linear mixed model. We use packages and we display the residual box plots. So the first one is the residual after fitting the linear mixed model. The second one is the box plots of the residuals after fitting the penalized linear mixed model, which we selected important variables, which we actually excluded the sex variable and the drug variable. According to these box plots, you will immediately understand, okay, there is something wrong with the data. We have some outliers. When we have some outliers, from a modeling viewpoint, it may come to your mind, okay, we must consider robust type modeling. So there are two, from my understanding, there are two streams of robust modeling. You can consider specifically from the beginning of the modeling stage, a robust model, or you can take the linear model, a linear parametric model with, better say, robust error distribution. What I mean by the robust error distribution, actually, according to the existence of outlier, we will consider the T error for our model instead of the normal error. If I take you through the literature review, you will see many researchers consider normal errors for this model and also analyzing this data. However, we here consider T as the robust alternative, or better say, heavier tail alternative to the normal for the error term. So this is the second stage of the study. Again, analyzing the data. We started from the response to see which model is better. Although I consider the linear model, but there is a suggestion that you can also consider nonlinear model. And the other one is the data itself, the existence of outliers or extreme values, which suggested to consider a T distribution as the distribution of the error term. Here we have some literature review. There are many good works in the literature, specifically working on this data. Some consider only the multivariate linear mixed model, which they took the normal distribution as the distribution of the error. Some also extended their works. Some others consider the robust extension, but not the multivariate case that we are considering here, the multiple case, which I refer to as robust extension of the linear mixed model. So these two categories, which they have published their papers in really good journals, statistical journals, they consider robust extension, but for multiple modeling, not multivariate modeling. And here, there is an extension, the third category, there is an extension of robust modeling with multivariate or multiple outcomes, but the thing which we want to add is selecting important variables, which I'm going to discuss now. Okay, let's review the objective again. The main objective of my presentation is to do simultaneous variable selection and estimation. So it is not just modeling, it is not just considering multivariate model with T errors. We also want to conduct variable selection. And we use multivariate T mixed effect longitudinal model for multiple outputs. Now, I will explain about the details of the model. Up to this point, I try to give a very short picture about the data and the purpose of the study. Now we consider the modeling part of the presentation. Suppose we have a sample of a sample in hand, and we have actually outcome, better say R outcome or some outcome variables or response variables on SR repeatedly observation over time. So here R is an indication of the number of response variables, not by means of the points, by means of the different variables. So if R is equal to 2, it means that you have a multivariate model with 2 different response variables. If R is equal to 3, then again you have a multivariate model with 3 different response variables, which they are correlated. That is the important factor in our study. The rest is very known to modelers, but when you consider different output variables and you measure on the subjects repeatedly, then you have a matrix. So here we want to consider a model for a matrix, or we want to consider a distribution for a matrix. From a mean regression type modeling, we want to find a model for the expected value of this matrix response. Commonly known in the literature and useful is you consider the vectorization of this matrix and you work with the vec of the matrix. Then if you use this vectorization operation, then you can actually fit the distribution or fit your model to a vector. So that's actually the common and known trick when you want to deal with multivariate analysis. So you see how we twist the theory in order to get required and satisfactory results. Also, if we use the vec operator on the response, we must use the vec operator on the error term of the model. And we consider the multivariate T linear mixed effect model. The first part is the fixed effect part, fixed effects, and the second part is the random effect. So we consider a fixed effect. As I said, this is the linear type modeling. You can consider non-linear type modeling, and the extension is not that much hard. Here for the error term, we consider the T distribution, and we assume that the random component is independent from the error component, which is a common assumption in modeling longitudinal data. We take a specific covariance structure for the random component and also a specific covariance structure for the error term, for the measurement error part of the model. I don't want to discuss about these covariance structures in details, but in the numerical analysis, you will see different types for the working covariance structure. Okay, so for the sake of parsimony and in order to digest the model better, we assume that the error term has this distribution, the T distribution, as we already assumed. With this scale parameter, actually, omega I is a time-dependent correlation matrix. Again, in the numerical study, I will show some different types that is used to address possibly serial correction among different irregularly observed occasions. Further, since we consider T distribution, we have degrees of freedom. So in our optimization stage of fitting the model, we need to find the suitable degrees of freedom, which we propose a conditional EM algorithm in order to estimate the parameters as well as the degrees of freedom. But again, another twist, which makes the modeling very simple. some researchers already presented the multivariate modeling by the normal error. Here we use the hierarchical presentation in order to connect the t-distribution, which is a bit hard working with it when you want to conduct modeling with it, with the normal distribution. With this well-known hierarchical representation, we connect the result of the normal with the t-distribution. This representation is very well known and mostly used in extending the modeling for the t-distribution. And finally, the major extension compared to the previous works is considering the penalized likelihood in the study. Since we started with a model with error theme, so we have the likelihood. Now we want to select important variables with automatic selectors. For this purpose, we consider penalized estimation, and we consider a set of penalty functions, which we specifically consider the SCAT, which is a very useful penalty function with fruitful properties. I don't want to discuss about the properties of SCAT, but the well-known paper of Fan and Lee, you can refer to this paper, which is published in Journal of American Statistical Association in 2001, and see the good properties that this penalty function proposes. Okay, so we wrap up the work. We propose the model. We were considering the multivariate dimensional mixed effect model with the t error, and we consider the penalized estimation, and that's all. This is the model that we want to fit to the data. Now, from a statistical viewpoint, not from a data science viewpoint, when you propose a model, when you propose the estimation strategy, it is very important you check whether your obtained estimates have good properties, or better say from an asymptotic viewpoint. So here we show that under very nice theorem, we show that the obtained estimates from this estimation strategy have good properties. Okay, this is the main theorem, which we give the oracle properties of the obtained estimates. Once again, we have some significant and insignificant variables. Let's say those insignificant variables are set to 0. So we have non-zero estimates. And we want to obtain estimated values for those non-zero variables, which we do not know in reality. And we use oracle properties in order to show that this estimation strategy is consistent. So we can significantly estimate non-zero coefficients, which we do not know in reality, and we can obtain those zero parameters or features with high probability. On the other hand, we have the normal distribution, or better say the asymptotic normal distribution for those which we selected. So here, beta 1 is actually the real set, non-zero set, or better say significant set of the parameters or features, which we do not know in the real world. And beta 2 is the zero set. We have these two properties, which are called again oracle properties, which shows that this estimation is consistent, and we have good rates for the covariance of the selected variables. Now let's back to the data analysis, and this is the last part of my talk. In the data analysis, we have a kind of history for this data. You see, this data is pretty old. And the reason, once again, I selected this data is to that I'm able to compare my result with the previously known very powerful models, and to have a benchmark study that you can redo the analysis, or if you propose a new one, compare your result with ours. Okay, I explained about the response variables, but here we also have some explanatory variables. For example, we have the ID number or 5-time variables, which are age and total number of follow-up days, and also some important variables, sex, drug, and status. Okay, when you refer to the doctor will record you are male or female. So apparently, anyone, and you've for sure you've seen in many modeling that they consider the sex as a explanatory variable. And also this drug variable or this drug explanatory variable, which as far as I know is an expensive drug which they give to the patients. And if you include this variable in your model, it means that you need to give this drug to your patient in order to do the prediction for the responses. However, in this study, we will obtain a different order. Okay, we will go to the results. This is the summary of parameter estimates. In this summary, you will see we have two sets of variables with the same meaning. So we have one intercept first pane and the second intercept, another intercept in the second pane. But this first pane is actually the set of parameters we have for the first response variable. This second set is the explanatory variables we have for the second response variable. However, in our modeling, we consider correlation between these two responses. And you see from the data analysis, the estimate of the drug is 0 for both response variables. If we use the SCAD multivariate T longitudinal model, mixed effect model. And if we don't penalize the model, if we just use the multivariate T mixed effect longitudinal model, then although the estimates are close to 0, but they are not exactly 0. So we can decide at least we can eliminate the drug from our predictive part of the model or from the linear part of the model, which is very important for prediction. Or if we consider the sex, we will see, okay, here for the second response variable, sex doesn't have high impact factor, but for the first one, it has. So further analysis is really needed in order to make sure that we can exclude sex from the study or not. So up to this point, we came to the understanding that we can eliminate this expensive explanatory variable from our predictive modeling. And here we have the estimates for the random component of the model. Again, we have the penalized multivariate T and multivariate T estimates for the random components. Finally, in order to see whether, apart from the theoretical results, we have obtained satisfactory result from data viewpoint by measuring the mean prediction error. So here we compute the mean prediction error of our model, and we consider different choices for the scale parameter of the T distribution. If you remember, I said I will explain more about this, the structure of the scale metrics of the T distribution. Here, for the first one, we consider on a structure omega I. The second one is the exchangeable, and the other one is autoregressive. These are actually used for serial correlation. Here we have AIC, PIC, but more than these two factors or criteria for comparing the models, we have the mean prediction error. The first one is the proposed new model, which is the penalized multivariate T mixed effect longitudinal model. The second one is the same model without penalization, and the other one is the penalized multivariate normal mixed effect longitudinal model. And if you compare the results, you will immediately understand, okay, this proposed model from a mean prediction viewpoint works better. So we divided our data into training data and test data. We obtained estimates from the trained data, and then we compare the predicted values with the known responses in this test set, and obtain this mean prediction error. And you see, considering the proposed penalized multivariate T mixed effect longitudinal model, our model works better compared to these models, which, or not the third one, but the second one already proposed and considered by many authors in the literature. Okay, thank you very much for listening to my talk. There are some possible extension of this work. As I said at the beginning, you may consider extending of this work to nonlinear type modeling. You can also start from a robust viewpoint and you consider a robust model, like, for example, taking an M estimation type modeling and compare the results. However, I must point that it is not a non-parametric viewpoint. It was fully parametric viewpoint, which we took a linear mixed effect longitudinal model with the T distribution as the error term. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'm ready to answer your question if you have any, and I'm able to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Prof. Arashi, it was wonderful to host you today. And as you said, I'm going to keep my video off to allow our audience some bandwidth. And I'd like to encourage our audience now to please come forward with any questions or comments. I always encourage comments that they might have. So audience, please feel free. If you can raise your hand. Alternatively, simply unmute your microphone. And I will welcome you. I've got Solly Millard. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you very much for a very good lecture. I was just wondering, did you only consider the SCAD penalty, and if so, why?
Thank you for this nice question. Actually, there are some, from automatic viewpoint, I selected a SCAD because a SCAD proposes good and fruitful properties by means of unbiasedness, sparsity, and continuous estimate compared to the other penalty functions. Although it is a non-convex and a concave penalty, and it is not easy to optimize the problem or optimize the objective function when you want to do the numerical analysis, but it proposes good properties. But not from automatic selecting viewpoint. If I want to compare selection with, for example, Molo CP or stepwise or AIC, BIC, other classical methods, as I showed in the theoretical part, specifically with the proposed theorem, if you conduct penalized estimation with the SCAD, you will obtain consistent results. And we don't have this consistency using other classical penalized estimation methods.
Oh, thank you very much, because I know one of your students last year developed a new penalty, and I was just wondering whether that penalty could also be a possibility.
Yes, you know, the research is in the developing stage always, and of course, if it is a convex penalty, then it is very easy to be implemented. Actually, I didn't compare the newly proposed penalty function in this study and just use the good properties of the SCAD.
Oh, thank you very much.
Great, Solly, thank you so much for your question. And I'd like to invite our next audience member to come forward. Just unmute your microphone and I can call on you. Thank you. We've got just a message in the chat from Mahdi, who says, great presentation, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anything in the chat. I don't have any questions or comments. So I'd like to just make one more call to our audience members. We've got quite a lot of statisticians present with us today. Gopika, one of our postgraduate funded students, said, "Excellent presentation, Prof." And Andriette Becker says, "Thank you so much." As well as Najme from, so Najme Nakairad says, "Thank you so much, so informative." And Nandi Bao, another one of our postgrad funded students, says, "Thank you, great seminar." So yeah, I'd like to join them in thanking you very much, Prof. If you're happy for me to, if there are no more questions or comments from the audience, then I think I'm going to wrap things up, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you, Diane, for the invitation and giving me the opportunity to present my study.
It's been an absolute pleasure to host you, Prof. Arashi, and certainly on behalf of our audience as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you well in all your future research. So thank you.
Thank you.